There are secrets that money can't hide, and love that even betrayal can't destroy. When multimillionaire James Harrington wed the bright, vivacious Sabrina Collins, the world applauded their fairy tale romance. However, fairy tales often come with dark twists. One cold afternoon, Sabrina announced she was pregnant, and James, convinced that she had been unfaithful, disowned not only her, but the children she carried. No one believed Sabrina's side of the story, and she fled in disgrace. Fast forward 9 months, and she returns with triplets who look alarmingly like her estranged husband. This isn't just a family drama. It's a ticking time bomb. James Harrington was the type of man people either envied or despised at first glance. Standing at 6'2" with dark hair slicked back and a jaw carved by quiet determination, he commanded attention whenever he stepped into a room. Born into an old money family in Charleston, South Carolina, James had been taught the fine art of stoicism and public image from a young age. Over time, he built his own fortune, separate from his family's, dabbling in tech and real estate to add to his trust fund. By 30, he was wealthy beyond imagination. By 35, he was known nationally, especially after a flurry of front-page articles regarding his business expansions. Sabrina Collins was an entirely different story. A small-town girl from rural Tennessee, raised in a modest home, brought up on the values of honesty and hard work. With sparkling hazel eyes and an infectious laugh, she was a warm presence in any space, carrying an aura of kindness that disarmed even the coldest hearts. She had left her hometown for a chance at a better life, working her way through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. By the time she finished her MBA, Sabrina was determined to scale every mountain that came her way. Their paths converged at a charity gala in New York, organized to raise funds for underprivileged children. Sabrina, working as an associate at a private equity firm, had volunteered to help with the event. James was one of the major sponsors. He couldn't tear his gaze away from her. Something about the gentle but unyielding determination in her eyes captivated him. Sabrina, for her part, was mesmerized by James's magnetism and the humility he exuded despite his towering wealth. They talked that night about everything from philanthropic ventures to childhood stories, discovering they shared common goals. They both wanted to change the world, albeit in different ways. James had the money and the reach. Sabrina had the passion and heart. It was as if the universe had scripted a perfect collision of souls. One date led to another. They were both wary of gold diggers and unscrupulous suitors. Sabrina conscious of his fortune, and James cautious about her intentions, so they took it slow. However, every night they spent together illuminated how deeply they complemented each other. James was strategic and rational. Sabrina was empathetic and intuitive. 2 months later, James proposed to her after a weekend in the Swiss Alps, where they'd gone for a charity skiing event. Sabrina said yes, tears of joy freezing on her cheeks as they stood on a snowy summit. Wedding bells chimed in Charleston at an extravagant but tasteful ceremony, attended by close family, wealthy associates, and Sabrina's humble relatives from Tennessee. James insisted on flying them all in, lodging them at the city's best hotels, making sure Sabrina's parents didn't feel overshadowed by the Harrington family's grandeur. The ceremony was like a modern fairy tale, so picturesque that tabloids splashed the wedding photos across their glossy pages for weeks. Nobody could guess that darkness brewed beneath that perfect veneer, especially not Sabrina. She was a woman in love, stepping into a seemingly enchanted palace, a place she believed could only ever nourish her heart. If only she knew that some seeds once planted might blossom into tragic misunderstandings. especially in a family as guarded as the Harringtons. The first few months of married life were blissful. Sabrina and James traveled for both work and leisure. Japan, Monaco, Italy, enjoying the luxuries his fortune could provide. Sabrina marveled at the possibility of using those resources for charitable work. James was equally enthusiastic about Sabrina's philanthropic ambitions. But behind the extravagant vacations, subtle tensions began sprouting in the background. James's parents, Donovan and Lorraine Harrington, were old Charleston elite who placed a premium on lineage and proper breeding. They liked Sabrina, at least on the surface. Yet Lorraine made casual remarks about Sabrina's background, such as, "Your mother must be so impressed by all this finery, or our family tree has always been quite exclusive." Sabrina tried not to let such remarks wound her, yet they slowly chipped away at her sense of belonging. James, for all his love, was often absent, tied up with business expansions and corporate events. Sabrina understood this. They both knew the demands of high-level business. Yet it left her feeling isolated sometimes, trapped in a gilded cage. She tried to fill her time with volunteering at local shelters and working part-time as a consultant. Still, no matter how many philanthropic ventures she engaged in, she remained James Harrington's new wife in the eyes of Charleston's upper crust. When Sabrina discovered she was pregnant, her heart soared. She had always pictured herself as a mother, teaching a daughter or son the wonders of kindness and ambition. She prepared a surprise dinner for James at their family mansion, complete with candlelight, soft music, and a small gift box in which she placed a tiny pair of baby shoes. James arrived late that night, exhausted from a board meeting. The moment he took off his coat, she handed him the box, her eyes shining with anticipation. He opened it and stared uncomprehending for a moment. Then the realization dawned across his face, a mix of fear, confusion, and something else, something Sabrina couldn't name, passed in his gaze. Are you?" he began. But Sabrina barely let him finish. She threw her arms around him. "Yes. I'm pregnant, James. We're going to be parents." His arms came around her in a reflex, but the embrace felt rigid. "Parents," he repeated dully. She pulled away, scanning his face. "Are you happy?" He paused a second too long. "Of course I am," he said, forcing a smile. "It's just so unexpected." A knot of uncertainty twisted in Sabrina's belly. She'd been on birth control, but accidents happen. She thought maybe that was what troubled him, that they hadn't planned this so soon. But something else was evident in his eyes, a flicker of doubt that refused to vanish. In the days that followed, James's schedule became even more hectic. Sabrina tried to rationalize it. He was expanding to a new market, dealing with important negotiations. Yet some nights, his phone would buzz at odd hours, and he'd slip into the study to take calls he never discussed. She noticed short, furtive text messages from someone named CW displayed on his phone screen. Whenever Sabrina asked, he would brush it off as company business. When Sabrina was about 2 months along, she overheard a conversation in the hallway between James and his old friend, Martin Caldwell, a notoriously cynical businessman who had known James since boarding school. Their voices were low, but Sabrina stood at the corner, out of sight, listening. "Sabrina's pregnancy is too convenient," Martin was saying. "You can't deny the possibility that James interrupted him." "I know, but Sabrina isn't like that, I think." Martin let out a scoff. "You think, don't be naive. Gold diggers get creative. You sure the kid is yours?" Sabrina's heart froze. She clamped a hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. Immediately, James mumbled a response she couldn't fully catch, but the tone was uncertain. She fled upstairs before she heard the rest. Sabrina felt her world tilt. Never had James questioned her loyalty, at least not to her face. The hush in his voice, the doubt in Martin's accusations, shook her to the core. She suspected the Harrington family's prejudices might be fueling these doubts. Perhaps Donovan or Lorraine had whispered something, or maybe Martin had conjured this suspicion on his own. She felt alone. Though she tried to confront James about it that evening, he insisted everything was fine. She wanted to believe him, but deep down, she couldn't help feeling that the foundation of her marriage was beginning to crack. And she feared what might come next. As her pregnancy progressed, Sabrina did her best to remain positive. She attended prenatal checkups, took vitamins, and decorated the spare room in soft pastel colors for the nursery. Whenever James accompanied her to a doctor's visit, though he seemed distant eyes fixed on his phone as he answered emails, Sabrina tried to chalk it up to stress. At a family gathering at the Harrington estate, Sabrina's concerns deepened. Lorraine, having had too many glasses of champagne, approached Sabrina with a delicate smirk. "So, dear, remind me, when exactly did you conceive?" Caught off guard. Sabrina tried to calculate the approximate date. "Somewhere around 6 weeks ago. I'm about 10 weeks pregnant now, you know." "6 weeks ago," interesting, Lorraine murmured, an eyebrow arched high. "And were you and James even in the same city? Then I recall he was in London on business." Heat pricked Sabrina's face. "He came home unexpectedly. One weekend," she said, remembering how James had surprised her with flowers and a night out after returning from a long trip. Lorraine sipped her champagne slowly, never taking her eyes off Sabrina. "Yes, well, I do hope everything works out for you both." She turned and walked away, leaving Sabrina with a sick feeling in her stomach. James, who had seen the exchange from across the room, quickly came over. "What did she say?" he asked. "That you were in London. That maybe the baby Sabrina couldn't finish." Tears threatened to spill over. James embraced her, though again, the gesture felt forced. "Don't mind her. She's drunk," he said, but an unease lingered in his eyes. Later that night, Sabrina dreamt of a baby's cries echoing down the empty halls of the Harrington mansion, with no father around to comfort them. She woke up sweating, a cold dread curling in her gut. It got worse when a family friend, Michelle Carter, a prominent attorney in Charleston, and someone who had always been cordial to Sabrina, invited her for lunch. Michelle tried to reassure her that the rumors swirling about Sabrina's fidelity were baseless, but the fact that Michelle had to mention them at all spoke volumes. "Look," Michelle said over lobster bisque, "I'm sure there's no truth to it, but people are talking, and James hasn't been particularly vocal in shutting them down." Sabrina gulped. "What do you mean?" Michelle pursed her lips. "He's not confirming or denying. He's simply ignoring the chatter, and you know how that fuels gossip. If you need any legal advice or want to protect yourself..." Sabrina shook her head. "No, I trust my husband," she insisted. But the pit in her stomach only deepened. One weekend, hoping to reassure James once and for all, Sabrina mentioned the possibility of a paternity test. He balked at the idea. "I'm not subjecting my unborn child to that sort of invasive scrutiny," he snapped. "Do you think I want people dissecting our private life? My company's image is at stake here. The rumors would explode." Sabrina's eyes welled with tears. "But you can see how much it's hurting me, this silent suspicion from you and your family." James ran his hand through his hair, looking torn. I can't deal with this right now. I have an important investor to woo. Can't we just..." Can't we talk about this later?" Sabrina nodded, her throat too tight for words. That night she lay awake, feeling the child move inside her. She placed her hand on her swelling belly, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She couldn't remember how many days or weeks had passed since James had spoken words of genuine affection. His mood swings and aloof manner had replaced warmth with a chilling uncertainty. They were drifting apart, and Sabrina sensed that an inevitable confrontation loomed. The confrontation happened unexpectedly. One morning, Sabrina was in the library researching baby care tips. James had left his laptop open on the desk, a rare lapse in his otherwise guarded behavior. She glanced at the screen, noticing an email chain with subject lines referencing paternity concerns and discrete options. Her stomach dropped. Heart racing, she scanned the most recent email. A doctor's name, Dr. Caldwell Watkins. Someone she recognized as a private specialist who handled high-profile paternity cases. There was mention of an appointment date just a week away, and a confidential approach that would keep it out of the public eye. Sabrina felt a surge of emotions: betrayal, anger, heartbreak. She paced the library, fighting tears, clinging to the last vestiges of composure. A few minutes later, James walked in, still in his tennis whites from a morning match at the club. He paused upon seeing the expression on her face, and then his gaze fell to the open laptop. "You went through my emails," he demanded, slamming the laptop shut. "You're planning a paternity test behind my back." Sabrina's voice wavered with rage and hurt. "How could you?" He placed his racket down carefully. "You don't understand. I understand perfectly." She spat, heart pounding. "You let your doubts fester. You listened to your so-called friends and your mother's insinuations. And now you're going behind my back. Why? Why couldn't you just talk to me? We could have done this together." James rubbed his temple. "I wanted to avoid drama. If the test is negative..." Sabrina gasped, stepping back as if struck. "Negative? How can you even say that I don't know what to believe anymore?" James finally shouted, his voice echoing off the mahogany shelves. "From the start, it's been hammered into my head that I can't trust people outside my circle. My mother. Martin. They keep telling me I'm being naive. And now look at the timing of your pregnancy. Everyone says it's too convenient. They question your background. And you're not giving me any real assurance." Tears cascaded down Sabrina's cheeks. "Do you hear yourself? I've been faithful. I've done nothing but love you. And you're letting your paranoia, your family's bigotry, destroy our marriage." James winced. "I'm sorry, but I need proof." Sabrina's entire body trembled. "Then there's nothing left to discuss." She stormed out of the library, ignoring James's pleas for her to come back. She packed a small bag heart in her throat. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to get away from the suffocating mansion, from the father of her inborn child, who refused to trust her. She called a taxi, ignoring James's repeated calls and texts. As the taxi pulled away from the gates, Sabrina glanced back at the imposing Harrington estate, its pillars and gardens gleaming in the midday sun. The place that had once held all her hopes now stood as a cold fortress of suspicion and heartbreak. Sabrina fled to the only place that offered solace: her parents' small farm in rural Tennessee. The shift from Charleston's aristocratic enclaves to the rustic farmland was jarring but liberating. As she stepped onto the porch, her mother, Catherine Collins, rushed out to hug her. Sabrina collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing. Her father, Robert Collins, a quiet man who spoke volumes through his steadfast presence, walked up slowly. "We'll take care of you," he said simply, clasping his daughter's hand. For a few weeks, Sabrina found refuge in her childhood home. She slept in her old room with faded posters on the walls, the whir of the ceiling fan, a lullaby of sorts. She helped her mother with household chores, relishing the normalcy, the sense of belonging. One afternoon, as Sabrina sipped lemonade on the porch, her childhood best friend, Sarah Martin, dropped by. Sarah had heard rumors of trouble. Over the years, their contact had been minimal, but old bonds quickly reignited. Sabrina confided in Sarah about James's suspicions and the looming paternity test. Sarah listened quietly occasionally, placing a reassuring hand on Sabrina's belly. "I never liked what you told me about his family," she admitted, "but I also never thought James would stoop so low." Sabrina shrugged her eyes, still swollen from crying the night before. "I didn't either." She flipped through her phone, noticing texts from James. Some were demanding, others apologetic, as if he were caught in a storm of his own making. She ignored them all. She needed time to think. Still, a part of her ached for James. She remembered the gentleness she had seen in him during their first months, the sweet gestures, the whispered promises. How could he have allowed all that to be overshadowed by distrust? In the 3rd month of her pregnancy, she finally visited a local obstetrician. Everything seemed normal, except the doctor noted that she was carrying more than 1 baby twins at least. Sabrina stared at the ultrasound screen in awe. 2 sets of tiny hands, tiny feet, 2 beating hearts. She choked on a sob, half in amazement, half in fear. As the months wore on, Sabrina began to feel more nauseous than usual. She struggled with morning sickness that often stretched into the afternoon. Her mother worried, insisting on bringing Sabrina to the local clinic more frequently. That was when Dr. Myers, the local OB-GYN, noticed something unusual. After a series of scans, Dr. Myers called Sabrina in. "I have some big news," the doctor said, her tone cautious, but with a hint of a smile. "We miscounted before." She flipped the ultrasound images on the screen. "This is not a set of twins. It's triplets." Sabrina's jaw dropped. Triplets. 3 babies. She felt as if the room spun for a moment, and her mother gripped her hand excitedly. Sabrina's tears flowed freely, but beneath the awe and joy, anxiety gnawed. How would she handle 3 babies alone? Then came another blow. Dr. Myers explained that with triplets, complications could arise. Sabrina needed specialized care, possibly bed rest, as she approached her 3rd trimester. The cost of such care would be substantial. Sabrina had some savings from her prior consulting work, but she had never planned on raising 3 babies without her husband's support. That night, she lay awake, hand resting on her belly, feeling fluttery movements. She whispered to them, promising to love and protect them, no matter what. And in the back of her mind, she wondered if James would ever come around, or if he would remain shackled by doubt forever. As the weeks passed, the gossip mill in Charleston churned out a range of stories about Sabrina's absence. Some said she had run off with a secret lover. Others claimed she'd been caught red-handed, and James had kicked her out. The Harringtons, for their part, maintained a stony silence, refusing to speak about private family matters. James's conscience weighed heavily. He spent many nights in an empty mansion haunted by memories of Sabrina's laughter, echoing off the gilded walls. His mother and father continued to drop hints, telling him he was better off. Martin Caldwell, ever the cynic, pushed James to finalize a divorce before Sabrina came after his fortune. And yet James couldn't bring himself to take that step. Deep down, he missed Sabrina. He yearned for her warmth, her unwavering optimism. She had made him believe in the better parts of himself. One evening after a business dinner, James found himself scrolling through his phone, looking at old photos. There she was, beaming on a boat in Monaco, hugging him, while the sun set behind them. Another snapshot showed her in Japan wearing a kimono and flashing a delighted grin. He realized just how much light she had brought into his life. In a moment of weakness, or perhaps clarity, he decided he needed answers. He contacted an old acquaintance, Detective Alec Ramirez, a private investigator in Charleston. "Find out where Sabrina is," James said. "I need to talk to her." Discreetly, Alec delivered results swiftly. He informed James that Sabrina was in Tennessee at her parents' farm. James boarded his private jet the next day, ignoring his mother's protests and Martin's sarcastic remarks about running into a trap. He arrived in the late afternoon, stepping out into the rural setting that was the antithesis of Charleston's polished elegance. The farm smelled of freshly cut hay and the distinct odor of livestock. His expensive leather loafers pressed into the dusty ground, and he realized how far removed his life had been from Sabrina's roots. Robert Collins was the first to spot him. The older man stiffened, wiping his hands on his overalls. "You've got nerve showing up here, son." James swallowed his pride. "I just want to see my wife." "She's not sure she wants to see you," Robert said bluntly, crossing his arms. Despite the tension, Catherine Collins stepped onto the porch, glancing at James with a mixture of pity and coldness. "You'll find her in the barn," she said softly, "if she'll speak to you." James thanked her and walked toward the weathered wooden structure. He found Sabrina inside, tending to a pregnant mare. She wore old jeans and a flannel shirt stretched over her own rounded belly, which he suddenly noticed was far larger than he had expected. A wave of guilt crashed over him. She heard his footsteps and turned. Her hazel eyes flashed with a million unspoken sentiments: anger, betrayal, longing, and something else. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, as if afraid to disturb the horse. James opened his mouth, closed it again, then whispered, "I needed to see you." Sabrina's hand protectively rested on her belly. The silence between them was thick. Finally, Sabrina said, "I'm pregnant with triplets, James." His eyes widened. "Triplets," he choked out. She nodded, tears threatening to spill. "Do you still doubt they're yours?" He didn't know how to respond. Guilt raged inside him like a storm. He took a step toward her, but she moved back, standing near the horse, as if drawing courage from the animal's presence. "I'm sorry," he finally managed. "I was stupid. I let people get in my head. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I want to try. I want to do the right thing for you and our children." Sabrina's lips trembled, tears escaping, but she didn't crumble into his arms. You can't just show up and expect everything to be fine. Trust isn't a switch you flip on and off. James nodded. "I know. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust again." They stood there, locked in an emotional standoff, the dust particles swirling in the sunlight, streaming through the barn walls. It was a moment of reckoning for both of them, a moment that set the stage for the next twist neither could have anticipated. Over the following weeks, James rented a small house near the Collins farm, determined to prove he was serious about supporting Sabrina. He showed up at doctor appointments, took notes on prenatal care, and even helped around the farm, despite having little idea how to handle livestock. Robert Collins said little, but Sabrina's mother seemed to soften noticing James's efforts. Still, Sabrina kept an emotional wall around herself. She allowed James to accompany her to medical checkups, but she rarely spoke about their future. The triplets' health was paramount, and she wouldn't risk emotional turmoil that could endanger them. During one ultrasound session, Dr. Myers showed them 3 tiny, squirming forms on the screen. James clutched Sabrina's hand, his eyes moist. "They're amazing," he murmured. For the first time, Sabrina felt some of the old warmth from him, the James she had married. But just when it seemed they might find a tentative peace, the Harrington family intervened. Lorraine called James incessantly, demanding explanations. Donovan Harrington threatened legal measures if James embarrassed the family name with a public scandal. Martin Caldwell, with his toxic commentary, insisted Sabrina was milking the situation. One day, a sleek black SUV rolled up to the Collins farm. Out stepped Lorraine Harrington, clad in designer attire, starkly out of place amid the farm's dust. She approached the porch where Sabrina sat cradling her pregnant belly. Lorraine regarded Sabrina with a cool stare. "You've caused quite a stir, my dear," she began. Sabrina clenched her jaw, remembering the woman's insinuations. "I haven't done anything but carry my children." Lorraine's gaze swept over the farmland. "Triplets," James said. "Quite a feat." Her tone dripped with doubt. "But I must ensure these are truly Harrington heirs. We've hired Dr. Caldwell Watkins to conduct a non-invasive prenatal paternity test." Sabrina's anger flared. "James and I are handling our affairs. We don't need your involvement." Lorraine offered a thin smile. "I'm afraid you do. My husband and I will not have our family's legacy tainted. Either you cooperate, or we pursue more aggressive legal channels." Sabrina's eyes filled with tears of rage and hurt. "You just can't accept that maybe, just maybe, I'm not the monster you think I am?" Lorraine lifted her chin. "I'm protecting my family. Make your choice." Before Sabrina could retort, James appeared, having overheard the confrontation. He stepped between them, glaring at his mother. "This is unnecessary," he said through gritted teeth. "I already decided to trust Sabrina." Lorraine arched an eyebrow. "Is that so? Then you must be more gullible than I thought. But the test will happen voluntarily or otherwise. The Harrington name will be protected." Sabrina pushed past them, tears hot on her cheeks. She locked herself in her bedroom, refusing to come out until Lorraine departed. It felt like every time she tried to mend things with James, his family's hostility resurrected her worst fears. That night, James tried to console her through the closed door, but Sabrina stayed silent. She sat on the bed, one hand over her swollen belly, feeling the fluttery kicks of 3 innocent lives. She whispered a tearful apology to them for the chaos they'd soon inherit. Despite James's protests, Lorraine managed to schedule a non-invasive prenatal paternity test with Dr. Caldwell Watkins. Sabrina eventually agreed, if only to put the matter to rest once and for all. She steeled herself for the procedure, which involved a simple blood draw from Sabrina and a cheek swab from James. The tension in the clinic's waiting room was palpable. Sabrina sat on one side, James on the other, Lorraine hovering like a hawk. After the samples were taken, they were told to expect results in about a week. In that week, Sabrina tried her best to focus on her health. She was nearing her 3rd trimester, her belly big and heavy. She could no longer do simple tasks without discomfort, and Dr. Myers recommended partial bed rest. James took time off from his company to help her cooking meals, massaging her swollen feet, and reading parenting books out loud. There were glimmers of reconciliation moments when they laughed about baby names or how the triplets would inevitably turn their lives upside down. Yet Sabrina's guard remained. Every time she glimpsed Lorraine's face or remembered Martin Caldwell's accusations, she felt a dagger of betrayal twist in her chest. She couldn't shake the memory of James's first reaction, if the test is negative. Finally, the results arrived. Dr. Watkins called them into his private office, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken tension. James sat on Sabrina's left, Lorraine on her right, as Dr. Watkins reviewed the folder. "Well," Dr. Watkins began clearing his throat. "There's no easy way to say this, but I'll state it plainly. Based on the genetic markers taken from the fetal DNA and Mr. Harrington's sample," he paused dramatically, shifting his gaze among them. "James Harrington is the biological father." Sabrina let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Relief coursed through her, followed by a flash of anger. Anger that she had been forced to prove something so intimately obvious. James's shoulders sagged as if a massive weight had fallen away. He reached for Sabrina's hand, but she pulled hers back. Lorraine's expression flickered with something resembling shock, then annoyance. She quickly composed herself. That's settled then," Lorraine said, standing. Without another word, she strode out of the office. James exhaled shakily, turning to Sabrina. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this." Sabrina couldn't speak. Tears threatened to spill, a raw mixture of relief and lingering hurt. She wanted to forgive James, but she also wanted him to understand the depth of the pain he had inflicted, pain that wouldn't vanish with a single apology. They rode home in silence, Sabrina gazing out the car window at the passing countryside. The test confirmed the truth, but it didn't eradicate the scars of doubt that had led them to this point. News of the paternity results spread quickly among Charleston's elite circles, as if carried on the wind of whispered phone calls. Lorraine retreated from public commentary, but Martin Caldwell doubled down on his cynicism. "Perhaps she just got lucky," he muttered to James, earning a glare in return. Sabrina felt physically and emotionally depleted. She decided to stay in Tennessee until the triplets were born, finding a sense of peace in the open fields and her parents' unwavering support. James continued to reside in the small rental house nearby, trying to show Sabrina he was committed. He would bring her fresh produce volunteer to drive her to appointments and read up on fatherhood, but he couldn't erase the memory of how quickly he had believed the worst. Their conversations often devolved into tense silences. They tiptoed around each other, uncertain whether to embrace or retreat. One evening, Sabrina was struggling with back pain in her bedroom when James knocked on the door. She let him in too tired to argue. He placed a gentle hand on her lower back, massaging lightly, offering a moment of relief. "Thank you," she murmured. He sighed, sitting beside her. "We need to talk." Sabrina nodded, staring at her hands. James began looking down. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was scared of losing everything. My family's legacy, my reputation. You. I felt trapped by all these expectations. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth." She listened, her voice trembling as she replied, "I understand you were under pressure, but that doesn't justify doubting my fidelity. Do you realize how humiliating it was? Having everyone think I was a gold digger or a cheater." James cradled his head in his hands. "I'll regret it for the rest of my life," he whispered. "Please tell me how to fix this." Sabrina's eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm not sure you can. But if we're going to raise these babies together, we need a fresh start. We need to leave behind the Harrington mansion, the rumors, all of it. Start somewhere new. Maybe even here in Tennessee, at least for a while." James's brows furrowed. "You want me to leave Charleston?" I want us to build a life away from the ghosts of your parents' influence, she said firmly. If we can't do that, I don't see how we can move forward. He paused, wrestling with the idea. The Harrington name carried weight, and so did his business empire. Yet the look in Sabrina's eyes told him this was no idle request. It was a lifeline for their marriage. "Okay," he finally said, voice shaking with resolve. "I'll do it. Let me figure out how to run my businesses from a distance. But if you need it, I'll give you that space." Sabrina exhaled relief, warring with apprehension. They had taken a step toward reconciliation, but it was like walking on a tightrope, uncertain if they would reach the other side without falling. Sabrina was about 36 weeks along when she woke one night with intense abdominal pain. Panic surged. She'd been on partial bed rest, closely monitored by Dr. Myers, but triplets often arrived early. She called out for her mother. James, who was sleeping in a guest room, came rushing as well. Within minutes, they were helping Sabrina into the car, racing to the nearest hospital. The pain intensified, and Sabrina's heart pounded in terror for the safety of her unborn children. The hospital staff swiftly prepared for delivery. It was a whirlwind, nurses, doctors, bright lights. James donned scrubs, staying by Sabrina's side, holding her hand as she screamed through contractions. He wiped her brow, whispered encouraging words, tears in his eyes. The first baby arrived with a piercing wail. A little girl. She had a tuft of dark hair, reminding Sabrina immediately of James. "She's beautiful," James choked out, overwhelmed. Just minutes later, the second baby. Another girl emerged quieter, but healthy. And finally the third, a boy with a furious cry that made both parents laugh in relief. Hours passed in a blur of medical procedures. Eventually, Sabrina held her 3 newborns in her arms, tears streaming down her face. She looked at James, who was utterly entranced by the tiny bundles. They named the babies Charlotte Olivia and William, traditional names that honored both of their heritages. "I love you, James," whispered, pressing his forehead to Sabrina's. "And I love them. I'm so sorry for everything." She nodded. No words adequate for the storm of emotions raging inside her. They had created 3 new lives, each baby. A testament to love, perseverance, and the possibility of forgiveness. For a brief moment, everything felt perfect. The tension, the betrayals, the gossip. None of it mattered in that hospital room as they marveled at the miracle of life they had brought into the world. The days following the triplets' birth were filled with exhaustion, joy, and bonding. Sabrina's parents doted on their grandchildren, while James stayed close, learning how to feed and hold the babies with clumsy determination. The tension between him and Sabrina had eased slightly as they adjusted to the chaotic rhythm of new parenthood, but peace was short-lived. On the 3rd day, Sabrina woke to find Lorraine and Donovan Harrington standing in the hallway outside her hospital room uninvited and accompanied by Martin Caldwell. James quickly stepped in to intercept them, speaking in hushed but tense tones. Sabrina could see the tight set of his jaw and the glare in Martin's smug expression. Reluctantly, James let them in. Lorraine's eyes scanned the babies with clinical detachment. "We came to see our grandchildren," she said, as if making a business appointment. Donovan nodded stiffly, offering no warmth. Sabrina cradled Charlotte protectively. "They're resting," she said, coolly, not inviting them closer. Lorraine's voice turned sharper. "James tells us you're staying in Tennessee. That's not practical for children of this legacy. They need proper connections. Education, exposure. Charleston offers that." James cut in. "We're staying here. For now." Martin scoffed. You're going to raise Harrington heirs on a farm." Sabrina's anger flared. Better here with love and honesty than in a mansion full of control and suspicion. Before anyone could respond, she stood and asked them to leave. "This is not a negotiation room. It's my recovery space, and they're not pawns." Lorraine hesitated, clearly offended, but James didn't back down. "You heard her," he said firmly. "It's time to go." Once they were gone, Sabrina collapsed into her hospital bed, heart pounding. James sat beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She didn't answer. Her body trembled with the exhaustion of birth, but also the weight of knowing their peace could be shattered at any moment by a knock on the door and the past waiting outside. Once the babies were cleared to leave the hospital, James arranged for a comfortable home nurse to assist given the workload of 3 newborns. Sabrina was grateful for the help, even if the extravagance felt out of place in rural Tennessee. Still, the small farm-style house they had rented was warm and welcoming, a far cry from the towering halls of the Harrington mansion. Nighttime feedings were chaotic. Sabrina and James took shifts, each fumbling through diaper changes and lullabies. Sometimes they would bump into each other in the hallway, each carrying a crying baby, and despite the chaos, they'd share a weary smile. Moments like these forged a fragile bond, like forging steel in the fire of sleepless nights. Sabrina's parents came by often, offering homemade meals, rocking the babies to sleep, and providing moral support. Catherine teased James when he first tried to burp baby William, who promptly spit up on his designer shirt. James laughed it off, surprising everyone, including himself. Slowly, he was letting go of his polished, billionaire persona, becoming a father above all else. On Sundays, they'd take the babies for a short walk in the fields, letting them get gentle sunlight and fresh air. Sometimes the local townspeople would wave from afar, respecting their privacy yet clearly curious about the high-profile couple who had settled among them. Despite these moments of serenity, Sabrina and James remained aware of the Harringtons looming in the background. Donovan had emailed James documents, suggesting the children be included in a trust fund managed by the Harrington estate. Lorraine occasionally sent gifts, always accompanied by sharp-edged notes about the baby's future. James largely ignored them, focusing on building a new life. One day, as Sabrina was reading to the babies, she received a notification on her phone. It was a link to a tabloid article. The headline read, "Millionaire James Harrington's wife exposed, triplets, now confirmed his, but was there ever cheating?" The article rehashed old rumors painting Sabrina as a cunning farm girl who had trapped James with pregnancy. She felt her blood boil. The past month's stress flooded back. James, who noticed her stricken expression, took her phone. His face hardened as he read. "I'll take care of this," he said. Sabrina shook her head. "It's never ending, James. These rumors, they aren't going away." He sat beside her, placing an arm around her shoulders, careful not to jostle Charlotte in Sabrina's lap. "We can't control what the media says, but we can control how we live." She felt tears prick her eyes. "Can we? Or will they always invade our lives?" James pressed his forehead against hers, voice trembling with sincerity. "I want a future with you without lies, without suspicion. I'll fight for our family, I promise." Sabrina let out a shaky breath. "Then fight with me, not against me." They stayed locked in that embrace, with 3 precious babies cooing softly, a fragile family determined to find harmony, despite a world eager to tear them apart. As time went on, James worked remotely using video conferences to run his businesses. The arrangement was strenuous, but he managed to juggle his fatherly duties and corporate responsibilities. Sabrina, meanwhile, was adjusting to motherhood ×3, her days and nights blending together in a blur of feedings, diapers, and lullabies. One chilly afternoon, a formal letter arrived, sealed with the Harrington family crest. James opened it with caution. The letter invited Sabrina and James to a family retreat at the Harrington Private Lodge in Vermont. Allegedly, Donovan and Lorraine wished to discuss the triplets' inheritance and future plans. Sabrina looked at James skeptically when he showed her the letter. "They've made our lives miserable, and now they want a family weekend?" James frowned. "I have no idea what their true motive is, but they seem persistent about the children's place in the family. It might be better to address this now than to let it fester." After much deliberation, they decided to accept, hoping that this might be an opportunity to set boundaries once and for all. Sarah Martin, always the protective friend, offered to come along and help with the babies. Sabrina's parents volunteered too, but ultimately Sabrina felt it best if only she, James and Sarah, went, leaving Catherine and Robert to enjoy some quiet time. The private lodge in Vermont was stunning. A secluded cabin overlooking a frozen lake, complete with roaring fireplaces and panoramic views of snowy mountains. On arrival, they were greeted by a butler who led them to spacious rooms. The triplets, bundled in thick onesies, looked around with wide, curious eyes. Lorraine and Donovan arrived an hour later. Their stiff embraces did little to dispel the tension. Martin Caldwell was absent this time, which Sabrina took as a small blessing. That evening, they gathered in the living room. Donovan cleared his throat. "We recognize these children are Harringtons by blood. It's only right they be included in certain privileges: trust funds, shares in the family, holdings, educational prospects at the best institutions." Sabrina shifted uncomfortably. Lorraine added, "We want them raised with the best. Of course, that means they should be near us in Charleston." James kept a protective arm around Sabrina's shoulders. "We've decided to remain in Tennessee for now." Lorraine's lips pressed thin. "And how will you afford the kind of lifestyle that ensures they're groomed for success?" James stiffened. "I can provide for my family." Donovan nodded. "Of course you can, son. But you're making them live in substandard conditions. These children are heirs. They need an environment worthy of the Harrington legacy." Sabrina had heard enough. She stood carefully, placing baby Olivia in a cradle. "My children will be raised with love and values. If you think money is all they need, you're mistaken. We appreciate any help you want to give, but that doesn't give you the right to control our choices." Lorraine's eyes narrowed. "We're simply offering the best. One day they'll thank us." James rose beside Sabrina. "Your best mother comes with strings, and we're not willing to be puppets." The Harrington patriarch and matriarch exchanged glances. Finally, Donovan said calmly, "Think it over. We mean well." The tension carried into the next day. Sabrina awoke with a throbbing headache, drained from trying to juggle the babies in an atmosphere thick with expectation. Sarah helped keep the triplets occupied so that Sabrina could rest. James spent hours locked in tense discussions with Donovan about business and family obligations. In the end, it became clear that while Donovan and Lorraine wanted to secure the triplets' future with Harrington wealth, they also wanted control over how they were raised. Sabrina refused to yield. So did James, albeit with some inner conflict. They left Vermont with no final resolution. However, in a surprising gesture, Lorraine kissed each baby goodbye, looking momentarily softened. "They are perfect," she whispered, genuine emotion flickering across her usually composed face. Sabrina felt a pang of sympathy. Maybe Lorraine's veneer masked a woman trapped in the rigid expectations of a powerful family, just as James had once been. Back in Tennessee, life for Sabrina and James settled into a steady but fragile rhythm. The triplets, Charlotte, Olivia, and William, were growing fast, their unique personalities beginning to shine. Charlotte was fiery and loud, Olivia calm and observant, and William endlessly curious. Days were filled with laughter diapers and exhaustion. Evenings brought quiet moments where James and Sabrina would sometimes sit in silence, overwhelmed but united in their love for their children. Yet beneath the calm surface tension simmered. The Harringtons, though miles away, remained a looming shadow. Lorraine continued to email about elite nannies and invitations to christenings in Charleston. Donovan sent documents regarding trust funds and legacy planning. James, caught between his heritage and his wife's need for boundaries, tried to juggle both. But Sabrina noticed the hesitation in his eyes whenever Charleston came up. One afternoon, she caught him on a video call with Lorraine discussing a Charleston-based nanny. When he hung up, she confronted him. "Are you still letting them influence our lives?" she asked. James insisted he just wanted help. They were both overwhelmed. But Sabrina's trust was still healing. "We don't need spies in our home," she snapped. "We need peace." The argument escalated. The triplets cried. They both retreated, emotionally drained. Apologies came later, but the rift lingered. Then came a moment that brought everything into sharp focus during a routine checkup. Dr. Myers noticed Charlotte wasn't meeting certain developmental milestones. Concerned, James arranged for a pediatric neurologist, Dr. Timothy Morgan, to fly in from Charleston. The visit went well, and Charlotte was deemed fine with minor delays. But then Sabrina overheard a phone call between Dr. Morgan and Lorraine discussing persuading the couple to return to Charleston for better facilities. Furious, Sabrina confronted the doctor, who admitted Lorraine was trying to influence decisions. James backed his wife, but was visibly torn. That night, Sabrina made a quiet but firm decision. "I won't raise my children in a war zone between my home and your family," she said. "If you're with us, James, then be with us. Fully." Her words struck deep. James saw the weariness in her eyes, the pain still fresh from months of betrayal and gossip. He realized that loving Sabrina wasn't enough. He had to choose her. Not in part, in full. The choice wasn't easy. But for the sake of their children and the woman who had stood alone far too long, he knew what he had to do. The final fracture came when Sabrina's father fell gravely ill, sending her and James rushing to the hospital with 3 restless infants in tow. The weight of parenthood, health fears, and unresolved tension bore down on them like never before. And just as the storm reached its peak, a call from Martin Caldwell shattered any illusion of peace. He demanded James return to Charleston, claiming urgent business. Against his better judgment, James went, leaving Sabrina behind to care for her fragile father and their triplets. In Charleston, Martin presented what he claimed was proof-falsified bank statements that appeared to show Sabrina siphoning funds. James's heart raced, but instead of panic, his instincts kicked in. Upon closer inspection, the documents fell apart, errors in routing numbers, inconsistent dates. He realized it was a desperate attempt to drive a final wedge between him and Sabrina. Outraged, James confronted Martin, and then Lorraine, who admitted to orchestrating the investigation for his protection. That was the breaking point. James, once hesitant to confront his mother, now stood tall. If this is what protecting me looks like, lies, sabotage, paranoia, then I want no part of it. Sabrina is my wife, and you've disrespected her for the last time." He stormed out, severing ties with anyone who dared come between him and his family. When he returned to Tennessee, Sabrina was in the kitchen rocking William, while stirring soup for her recovering father. Her face was weary, her eyes cautious. James told her everything. The fake documents, the confrontation, the choice he had made. "I'm done with them," he vowed. "I'll walk away from the Harrington name if I have to. I want you. I want our family." Sabrina, worn and wary, listened in silence. Her eyes welled up. "Do you know how long I've waited to hear that?" she whispered. "I never stopped loving you, but I couldn't keep fighting for us alone." James stepped forward, pulling her into a trembling embrace. Between the simmering soup, the soft babble of their baby, and the aching truth between them, something broke and something healed. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And it was enough. That night they tucked the triplets in together. No more walls, no more doubts, just the quiet promise of a future rebuilt not on legacy but on love hard-earned. 6 months passed, and the triplets' first birthday arrived like a sunrise after a long storm. Charlotte, Olivia, and William had grown into joyful, crawling bundles of energy, each with a distinct personality. Sabrina and James, now deeply rooted in Tennessee, had reshaped their lives into one of simplicity, sincerity, and love. James had gradually distanced himself from the Harrington legacy, instead launching a sustainable farming initiative that supported the local economy. Meanwhile, Sabrina led charitable efforts for rural education and maternal health, regaining her professional identity while embracing motherhood. On the triplets' birthday, the farm buzzed with laughter and warmth. Sabrina's parents sang lullabies, neighbors brought homemade gifts, and Sarah Martin decorated the porch with colorful ribbons. It was a world away from Charleston's cold grandeur. Even the Harringtons attempted to mend bridges. Donovan extended olive branches through respectful letters and monetary contributions to the triplets' future, while Lorraine's resistance softened into polite restraint. Supervised visits were occasionally allowed, always on Sabrina's terms. Later that evening, under the shade of a towering oak, James took Sabrina's hand. "Thank you," he whispered, emotion catching in his throat, "for not giving up on us." Sabrina, eyes glistening with gratitude, replied, "And thank you for finally choosing us over legacy." As the sun dipped beyond the fields, casting golden light on their small, hard-earned family, the past felt like a distant echo. The betrayals, the gossip, the heartbreak, all had shaped them, but no longer defined them. Their love, once fragile and nearly broken, had been reforged stronger than ever. In Tennessee, far from society's gaze, the Harringtons were no longer a family bound by legacy but by love, resilience, and the future they built with their own hands. True love isn't always elegant or perfect, even when it's draped in wealth and privilege. Sometimes it's forged in the fires of scandal and heartbreak, where trust is shattered and rebuilt. James and Sabrina Harrington learned that lesson the hard way. Their marriage teetered on the edge when doubts fueled by jealous outsiders and meddling family ripped them apart. Yet the birth of triplets who looked just like James proved love can conquer bitterness, and trust can be mended when both hearts choose to heal. In a hushed courtroom packed with onlookers, Judge Karen Russell's voice rang through the tension. "Mrs. Carlyle, if you are pregnant, we need to know who is the father." The gasp that followed her question seemed to shake the walls. "Lily." Carlyle glanced at her husband, billionaire magnate Andrew Carlyle, whose clenched jaw spoke volumes. Across the aisle, Andrew's glamorous mistress Sabrina Miles tried to maintain her composure but was visibly trembling. Then Lily spoke the words that changed everything, igniting a firestorm of shock and accusations. The response was so explosive that Sabrina stormed out of the courtroom, slamming the door with a resounding echo. The city of Westbridge was no stranger to wealth and grandeur. Nestled between rolling hills and a glistening river, its skyline boasted modern architecture mixed with classic brick buildings that stood as silent witnesses to the shifting tides of power. The Carlyles were the talk of this opulent community. Andrew Carlyle, a man of imposing height and a mind so sharp that he had made his first million by age 25, was one of the city's most prominent figures. His company, Carlyle Innovations, specialized in renewable energy and had grown from a humble startup to an international behemoth valued at billions. Magazine covers regularly featured Andrew's stern yet confident profile, lauding him for his philanthropy and business acumen. Reporters hailed him as a visionary, someone who wanted to change the world for the better. But behind the carefully curated images and well-rehearsed interviews lay a man who battled demons of ambition. Andrew's desire to climb higher sometimes overshadowed his family life, and cracks in his once perfect marriage began to appear. Andrew's wife, Lily Carlyle, was different from many socialites in Westbridge. She was soft-spoken with warm brown eyes and a keen intellect hidden behind her gentle manner. People often underestimated her, mistaking her gentle demeanor for naivety. Yet Lily had the soul of a fighter, shaped by adversity from a young age. Orphaned by a fire that destroyed her childhood home. Lily learned resilience early on, although she rarely broadcasted her personal history. She was no stranger to heartbreak and survival. Lily and Andrew met in college at a networking event for entrepreneurial students, albeit from different spheres. He was the star speaker. She was the curious listener. Sparks flew from the moment he stepped down from the podium to answer her one question about solar panel design. Intrigued by her thoughtful query, Andrew asked Lily to coffee. That simple invitation bloomed into a whirlwind romance that culminated in a lavish wedding 2 years later. For a while, they were the golden couple, beautiful, charitable, and admired. Lily's radiant smile and Andrew's driven ambition made them a power duo in Westbridge. High society galas were routine fundraising events with a norm, and the Carlyles became synonymous with both modern philanthropy and innovation. Yet the chain of events that would lead them into a courtroom was brewing silently like a storm gathering on the horizon. Whispers about Andrew's late-night meetings and sightings of him escorting a mysterious woman to exclusive dinners circulated among society's rumor mill. Still, Lily and Andrew appeared side by side at gala events, forging a united front. Beneath the veneer, Lily's suspicions grew, and with them her heartbreak. Was Andrew's unwavering focus on business the only explanation for his late hours? Why was there often a faint trace of perfume on his lapel that wasn't hers? And when Lily discovered she was pregnant, instead of a moment of celebration, she felt her heart squeeze with worry. Those worries would soon manifest as an outright scandal culminating in the courthouse, with everyone seated, the camera flashes firing away, and Judge Karen Russell looking on with eyes that had seen it all. Sabrina Miles was a name that came out of nowhere, yet ascended quickly in the social circles of Westbridge. A well-known social media influencer, she prided herself on flaunting designer clothes, flashing selfies with A-list celebrities, and posting about her exclusive nights at top restaurants. Her tall, lithe figure and platinum blonde hair turned heads at every gathering, and her Instagram feed reflected a life of unending glamour. Where she came from was a mystery. Some said she grew up in Chicago's suburbs. Others claimed she was an heiress who had run away from home. One rumor even suggested she was dating a minor European royal before moving to Westbridge. Regardless, Sabrina arrived on the scene with fanfare, wooing the city's elite with a mesmerizing combination of charm and brazenness. Andrew first met Sabrina during a networking gala for renewable energy investors, sponsored by his own company. She had managed to secure an invitation, presumably by calling in favors from influential people who enjoyed her social media endorsements. While speaking with potential backers about expanding Carlyle innovations, Andrew noticed Sabrina from across the room. She stood out like a bright star, wearing a figure-hugging gown that left little to the imagination. Sabrina caught his gaze and offered a flirtatious smile, a silent invitation that was hard to resist. What began as a casual conversation turned into a series of friendly meetings. Andrew convinced himself that Sabrina was a savvy influencer who could help promote Carlyle Innovations' eco-friendly campaigns. Sabrina, for her part, appeared genuinely interested in the cause, though whether it was a genuine interest or a well-rehearsed act remained to be seen. The boundary between business and personal quickly blurred. Whispered phone calls, texts at odd hours, and scheduled lunches that extended into private dinners became routine. Andrew, who had always prided himself on control, found himself ensnared. Perhaps it was the thrill of secrecy, or the flattery of a younger, attractive woman who hung on his every word. Maybe it was the pressure at home, the sense that Lily had grown distant, though in reality Lily was only distant because Andrew was rarely present. Eventually, it evolved into a full-blown affair. Sabrina relished the attention and gifts, diamonds, lavish getaways, and posh apartments. Andrew, with his deep pockets, was more than capable of indulging her. He assuaged any guilt by telling himself Lily was preoccupied with her own philanthropic endeavors. He never thought Lily suspected anything. But Lily was no fool. She had begun to piece things together, the puzzle shaping into a picture that left her heart broken. Being pregnant only added to her emotional turmoil. She hesitated to confront Andrew, hoping that her suspicions might be wrong, that the perfume scent on his collar had been a coincidence, that the dinner receipts were merely business. The official reveal happened during an investors' conference in New York City. Photographers captured Andrew and Sabrina leaving a five-star hotel, his hand lingering on her waist in a way that suggested far more than a professional relationship. Gossip columns pounced, and soon enough Lily could no longer ignore the truth. Yet the affair was only the beginning of the betrayal. Sabrina's role in this saga would evolve in ways none of them anticipated, leading them all to the courthouse, where secrets would be laid bare and illusions shattered. Lily Carlyle grew up trusting her instincts. Raised in a modest neighborhood until her parents' tragic death, she had developed a sixth sense for subtle changes in people's behavior. She used that sense now more than ever, especially when it came to Andrew. She first noticed his unusual late nights. Of course, Andrew had always worked long hours, but once their business empire stabilized, he promised to cut back. Instead, Lily found herself alone in their sprawling mansion day after day, night after night. He'd claim it was urgent investor meetings or the dreaded phrase, "I need to meet with a client to finalize a deal." Sabrina's name came up in half-forgotten phone conversations, overheard through closed doors. Lily's heart raced each time she picked up on that faint mention. She tried to remind herself she had no proof until she stumbled upon an email thread in Andrew's personal inbox. A quick glance showed the subject line, Next rendezvous. The word stung like a slap. The realization gnawed at her. She was pregnant, anticipating a moment of unity and joy, hoping Andrew would come home early with flowers and an eagerness to share in their new chapter. Instead, she was confronted with secrecy and heartbreak. She weighed her options. Confront him. Confide in a friend. She chose the latter first, calling upon her best friend from college, Sophia Harris, a corporate lawyer with a compassionate ear. I'm worried Lily admitted over tea at a quaint cafe downtown. Everything changed in the past few months. He's different, distant. Sophia eyed her friend with concern. Have you talked to him about it? Directly? Lily sighed. No. I kept hoping it was just a phase. But I've found proof, if you can call it that. Sophia's jaw tightened. You can't sit on this, Lily. If you're pregnant, you both need clarity and honesty. Lily nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. She felt the injustice of it all. She'd never asked for the billionaire lifestyle. She'd only wanted love and stability. She had devoted herself to Andrew's dream, supporting him through countless sleepless nights while his company grew. And now this. Her suspicions reached a crescendo when Andrew abruptly flew to Los Angeles under the guise of meeting Mark Cuban for a potential partnership. Lily, armed with her misgivings, discovered Sabrina's social media post from the same city, bragging about meeting an influential billionaire for a late-night soiree. The photos were cryptic, but Lily recognized the suite's decor, one she'd shared with Andrew many times on business trips. It was then Lily decided she would gather all the courage she had left and confront Andrew. She prayed that perhaps there was some misunderstanding, some logical explanation. Deep down, she feared the worst. What Lily didn't expect was that the confrontation would lead to a public trial, nor did she imagine the fatherhood of her unborn child would become a question for the entire city to speculate upon. Yet suspicion had been planted, and the seeds would soon sprout into a scandal that no one in Westbridge could ignore. Lily waited until late into the evening when Andrew returned from his latest business dinner. The Carlisle mansion glowed with soft lighting, the classical music Lily had played earlier, still lingering in the background. She sat in the living room, legs crossed, hands gripping her teacup so tightly that her knuckles whitened. Andrew walked in, loosening his tie, oblivious at first to the tension that thickened the air. "You're still up," he said, his voice betraying a note of guilt. Lily didn't answer right away, instead setting down her cup with a delicate clink. Andrew froze. Her gaze was unrelenting, direct, quiet fury beneath controlled composure. "Andrew," she began, her voice quivering just a bit. "We need to talk." He sensed the gravity in her tone. He placed his briefcase down and slowly approached. "What's this about?" "You know exactly what it's about," Lily countered. She rose, crossing the room to stand face to face with him. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Finally, she threw down a social media printout, Sabrina's post from Los Angeles. "Recognize this hotel suite. Looks familiar, doesn't it?" Andrew's eyes darted from the paper to Lily. In that moment, he knew he was caught. "Lily, I can explain." She gave a bitter laugh. "Can you? Because I've watched you lie to me for weeks, maybe months. I can't do this anymore, Andrew." Andrew ran a hand through his hair, searching for the right words. "I didn't want to hurt you. I swear. It just happened. It was a moment of weakness. A moment Lily's voice cracked. This was more than a moment. Don't you dare reduce it to that. The dinners, the trips, and now she's flaunting your affair online. He tried to approach Lily, but she stepped back, tears filling her eyes. You know I'm pregnant, she said softly, her voice trembling. I thought we'd be celebrating. Andrew's face paled. Pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? She turned away, hugging herself. I wanted us to have a moment of joy. But you were never around, always busy with these business trips. And now, with Sabrina, I couldn't bear it. His eyes filled with a mixture of shock and regret. Andrew reached out tentatively, but Lily pulled away. She felt humiliated and betrayed, yet her love for him warred with her anger. Please, Lily, Andrew pleaded. Let's figure this out. All those times I needed you, she murmured, and you were with her. How could you do this? Andrew bowed his head. I'm sorry, Lily. I never wanted to hurt you. But the apology fell flat. Lily inhaled sharply, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm going to stay with Sophia tonight. I need some space. As she walked out the door, Andrew felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He had once believed he could manage the situation, juggle a mistress, and maintain his marriage. However, in that one confrontation, he understood just how profoundly he had underestimated the storm that was coming. Word of the Carlisle scandal broke faster than Andrew could have anticipated. Westbridge's tabloids seized on the story. Billionaire caught in love triangle. The photo of Andrew and Sabrina leaving a hotel together made the front page of the Westbridge Gazette. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Did Lily Carlisle know? Would the couple divorce, who was truly at fault? Andrew found himself inundated by calls, journalists hounding him for statements, anxious investors questioning his stability, and business partners unsure of what this scandal meant for Carlisle Innovations. The weight of it all threatened to crush him. Meanwhile, Lily sought solace at Sophia's apartment. The supportive friend offered more than just a shoulder to cry on. Sophia was also a savvy lawyer. If you consider a divorce, Sophia said you need to think about what that means for you, the baby, and your share of the marital assets. You've devoted a lot of your life to Andrew's dream. Lily pressed a hand to her temple, her head throbbing. I've never cared about the money, but I do care about how this affects our child. Sophia nodded. Then we need to ensure that your rights and your child's rights are protected. Andrew is a billionaire. He can afford an army of attorneys if this goes sour. Lily's heart ached. Despite the betrayal, she wasn't ready to go nuclear. Andrew was still her husband, and they were expecting a child. But every time she remembered Sabrina's smug face on social media, a fresh wave of anger and sorrow washed over her. Andrew tried to reach Lily multiple times, sending long messages begging for a meeting. Lily relented once, allowing him to visit Sophia's apartment. Seated on the couch, Andrew looked worn out, his posture defeated in a way Lily had never seen before. I want to make this right, he said. I'll end things with Sabrina. It was a mistake you repeated for months, Lily interjected, voice heavy with hurt. Andrew paused, swallowing hard. Yes, I was selfish. I never stopped loving you, Lily. I don't want to lose you or our baby. Her eyes narrowed. And what if she's pregnant? The tabloids have been having a field day with that rumor. Andrew shook his head. She's not. That's just speculation. Sabrina's furious that I've cut her off, so she's pulling whatever strings she can to stay relevant in the media. I promise you, Lily, there's no baby with her. Lily cast her gaze down her heart, torn between anger and longing for the life they once shared. I need time, she whispered, and you need to respect that. Andrew slowly reached for her hand, but Lily pulled away, tears glistening in her eyes. I'm staying here until I figure out what's next, she said. He nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Take all the time you need. But a quiet dread lingered between them. The swirl of rumors, the escalation in the press things were moving quickly, and no one could foresee the ultimate showdown looming in the courthouse. If Andrew had hoped to resolve things discreetly by cutting ties with Sabrina, he underestimated her vindictiveness. Outraged by his attempts to end their affair, Sabrina took to social media with cryptic statements aimed at fueling the rumor mill. She posted a photo of a positive pregnancy test, followed by the caption, "Not all secrets stay hidden forever." The city went into an uproar. Online forums exploded with theories. Was Sabrina pregnant with Andrew's child? Was Lily's baby even? Andrew's. The speculation turned uglier by the minute, damaging not only Andrew's reputation, but also his company's standing. Carlyle Innovations saw stock prices dip amid concerns over management stability. Sabrina's next move was even more audacious. She publicly threatened legal action. She claimed Andrew had promised her a penthouse and a substantial settlement if he ever walked away. She also hinted that she had evidence of questionable financial transactions, insinuating she could ruin him if he didn't comply with her demands. To quell the chaos, Andrew's legal team, headed by the formidable attorney James Bulldog Moriarty, drafted a cease and desist letter. They demanded Sabrina retract her statements and cease slandering Andrew. But the influencer's thirst for publicity and potential wealth had become insatiable. She refused. Lily read the headlines in horror. "Andrew Carlyle's mistress demands millions," said one. Another proclaimed, "Love triangle reaches breaking point." She thought of the unborn child she carried and how all this noise could affect her future. The stress weighed on her more heavily each day, and she found it increasingly hard to eat or sleep well. Sophia tried to reassure her. "Look, Sabrina hasn't provided any actual evidence of pregnancy beyond a picture of a test we can't verify. We can challenge that in court. And if Andrew says it's not his, he can demand a paternity test." Lily nodded, but worry gnawed at her. "Sabrina seems desperate," she said. "A person that desperate can create chaos." The next day, Lily's worst fears inched closer to reality. Sabrina filed a lawsuit claiming emotional distress breach of promise and defamation, accusing Andrew of manipulative behavior that had impacted her mental health. She demanded compensation to the tune of 8 figures. Suddenly, Andrew faced both a personal and legal storm. And in a cruel twist, Sabrina's legal team suggested questioning Lily's pregnancy. If Sabrina really was pregnant, how could they be sure Andrew was the father of Lily's baby and not someone else? The rumors online took that insinuation and ran with it, fueling endless gossip that Lily might have had an affair of her own to retaliate. Lily felt trapped, as though she had lost control of her own narrative. She wished she could simply vanish, take her unborn child, and find peace far away. But Andrew pleaded with her to stand by him, at least publicly. He promised that once this fiasco was over, they could start fresh. In a moment of raw honesty, Lily admitted to herself that despite the betrayal part of her, still yearned for the dream of a family with Andrew. And so, against her every instinct to run, Lily agreed to attend the first court hearing. The stage was set for a showdown that would leave Westbridge breathless. The first court hearing was a preliminary one meant to address Sabrina's lawsuit and Andrew's countersuit for defamation. Judge Karen Russell, a no-nonsense figure with steel-grey hair, presided in her black robe with the stern composure she was known for. Beneath that formality, though, lay a sharp wit that had unravelled more than a few cunning litigants over the years. Sitting at the plaintiff's table, Sabrina Miles looked every bit the celebrity, wearing designer sunglasses atop her head and a statement dress that hugged her figure. Her lawyer, a slick man named Garrett Bloom, exuded confidence. Opposite them, Andrew and his defense team, led by James Moriarty, were poised and serious. Lily sat beside Andrew, but kept her hands folded on her lap, her anxiety evident. The courtroom was packed with reporters and curious onlookers, all craning their necks for a glimpse of the drama. The hum of whispered conversations fell silent when Judge Russell took her seat and banged the gavel. She surveyed the parties before her. This is case number 2384. Sabrina Miles v. Andrew Carlisle and Andrew Carlisle v. Sabrina Miles. Let's keep this civil, folks. Sabrina's attorney stood launching into a performance worthy of daytime television. Your Honor, my client has been deceived and manipulated. Mr. Carlisle not only promised her financial support, but also engaged in conduct that deeply harmed her emotional well-being. He used his power and influence to lure her into an affair, only to discard her. Sabrina dabbed theatrically at her eyes with a tissue as camera shutters clicked. Andrew's jaw tightened. Lily glanced away, her stomach churning. When it was Moriarty's turn, he spoke calmly. Your Honor, the claims are baseless. Ms. Miles is engaged in a campaign to extort money from my client. She has offered no concrete evidence of pregnancy beyond an unverified photo. Furthermore, she publicly accused Mrs. Carlisle of adultery, by insinuation, harming the Carlisle family's reputation. Judge Russell listened intently, her eyes flicking between the parties. I see. Well, Ms. Miles, since you've brought this suit, the burden of proof lies with you. The court will require medical proof of pregnancy if that claim is central to your damages. Also, slander and defamation are serious allegations to be proven by Mr. Carlisle's side. Sabrina's lawyer nodded. Of course, we will provide the necessary documentation. Judge Russell then turned to Lily, her gaze softening slightly. Mrs. Carlisle, you are here as a potential witness, correct? Lily's throat went dry. She managed a nod. I understand this is a sensitive matter, the judge continued. Let's proceed respectfully. The hearing ended with Judge Russell setting a subsequent date for evidentiary disclosure. As the parties rose to leave, reporters shouted questions, flashes blinding Lily. Sabrina strutted by, throwing Andrew a venomous glare. In the hallway, Andrew whispered to Lily, We'll get through this. I promise. Lily only tightened her arms around herself, unsure whether to believe him or if the worst was yet to come. After the preliminary hearing, rumors multiplied like wildfire. Online forums spun increasingly wild theories. Some speculated Lily had a secret lover. Others claimed Sabrina was never pregnant at all, but was blackmailing Andrew with something more sinister than an affair. Conspiracy-minded blogs emerged calling the entire fiasco a setup staged to manipulate Carlisle Innovations' stock price. The stress took a toll on Lily, whose pregnancy was already delicate. She felt nauseous each morning, not just from hormonal changes, but from anxiety. Any time she left Sophia's apartment, paparazzi seemed to appear from nowhere, shouting invasive questions like, "Is Andrew really the father?" She dreaded going out, dreaded her phone buzzing with yet more messages of either sympathy or scorn from people who had no idea what she was going through. Meanwhile, Andrew tried to regain control. He held an emergency press conference outside Carlyle Innovations headquarters. Standing behind a podium, he maintained a calm but firm demeanor. "The rumors circulating are harmful and untrue," he said. "My focus remains on the success of this company and the well-being of my family. I have no further comment on personal matters at this time." Sabrina, never one to be outdone, took to live streaming. "I'm not trying to destroy Andrew Carlyle," she proclaimed to her thousands of followers. "I'm just seeking justice for the promises he made to me and for the emotional damage I've suffered. No one should be used and discarded." People ate it up, and divisions formed. Some stood by, Andrew citing Sabrina's past manipulative behaviors, which started to surface from old acquaintances coming forward. Others supported Sabrina, believing she was a victim of power imbalance. And then there were Lily's supporters, outraged that this scandal overshadowed her pregnancy and subjected her to public scrutiny. A few days later, Lily received a summons to testify in court at the upcoming evidentiary hearing. As she read the official letter, her hands trembled. She knew Sabrina's lawyers would ask her humiliating, invasive questions, possibly even insinuating that her unborn child wasn't Andrew's. Lily felt sick at the thought, but resolved to stand her ground. Sophia helped Lily prepare. They rehearsed potential lines of questioning, focusing on answering truthfully without giving the opposition room to twist her words. "Stay calm," Sophia advised. "They'll try to shake you. Don't let them." Andrew, for his part, showed up at Sophia's apartment to offer moral support. He brought Lily's favorite takeout miso soup and dumplings, but the gesture felt painfully inadequate. Still, Lily appreciated the effort. They sat at the kitchen table exchanging stories of how the media was hounding them, how strangers felt entitled to comment on their private lives. In a rare moment of tenderness, Andrew placed a hand on Lily's belly. "How is our baby?" Lily, tears brimming. "Simply," said Strong. She hoped that was true. She hoped that despite the swirling storm, their child would remain safe. But as the next court date approached, the tension ratcheted higher. Everyone sensed that a major confrontation loomed, one that could forever reshape the lives of Andrew, Lily, and Sabrina. The courthouse brimmed with anticipation on the day of the evidentiary hearing. Cameras clicked incessantly as Andrew, Lily, and their legal team stepped out of a black SUV. Sabrina arrived moments later, enveloped by a group of supporters holding signs that read, "Justice for Sabrina." Judge Karen Russell's courtroom was once again packed to capacity. The bailiff called for order, and soon Sabrina's attorney, Garrett Bloom, strode to the center. He wasted no time. "Your Honor, my client is ready to present undeniable evidence of her pregnancy and the emotional distress caused by Mr. Carlyle." From a manila folder, Bloom removed several documents. Medical records showing Ms. Miles is indeed pregnant approximately 8 weeks along. Gasps erupted in the gallery. Andrew stared intently, trying to conceal his surprise. Sabrina looked triumphant. Next, Lily was called to the witness stand. Dressed conservatively in a navy suit, she moved carefully, mindful of her own pregnancy. After swearing the oath, she perched on the stand. Her nerves coiled like a spring. Bloom started his questioning slowly, but the tension in his voice was palpable. "Mrs. Carlyle, you are also pregnant, correct?" "Yes," Lily answered softly. Bloom leaned in. "How far along?" "About 15 weeks," she replied, her hand unconsciously moving over her stomach. "And you claim Mr. Carlyle is the father?" Her eyes flicked to Andrew, before returning to Bloom. "He is." Bloom paced. "Are you aware my client has alleged in conversations with her supporters that Mr. Carlyle confided doubts about being the father of your child?" Judge Russell shot Bloom a warning look. "Counsel, keep it factual." Bloom pressed on. "Mrs. Carlyle, is there any possibility that someone else fathered your baby?" Lily felt a surge of indignation. "Absolutely not," she said firmly. "Interesting," Bloom drawled, "because Ms. Miles has messages from Mr. Carlyle messages in which he suggests you had become emotionally distant and that you were possibly seeing someone else." In that moment, Andrew's head jerked up. He mouthed, "That's a lie." But Bloom continued. He produced screenshots, lines of text, allegedly, from Andrew to Sabrina. Tears pricked at Lily's eyes as she scanned the paper. She recognized Andrew's style of texting, but it was possible the messages had been doctored. She looked to Andrew, her gaze pleading. "I never wrote that," Andrew said, standing impulsively. "I have no idea where those messages came from." Judge Russell banged the gavel. "Order," she barked. "Sit down, Mr. Carlyle. You will have a chance to refute." Lily's breath caught in her throat. The entire courtroom watched, waiting for her response. She lifted her chin, finding a sliver of courage. "Your Honor, I am certain Andrew Carlyle is the father of my child. Any suggestion otherwise is baseless." The judge nodded, studying Lily's sincerity. "We'll note that." Bloom then wrapped up with an insinuation. "So you deny any extramarital activities of your own?" "Noted." "But you can't speak for Mr. Carlyle, who it seems has been doubting you behind your back." Lily bit her lip, trembling with the effort to maintain composure. The question of paternity hovered like a dark cloud, fueling the tabloid's thirst for more. Andrew's attorney rose to cross-examine Sabrina next, and everyone leaned forward, sensing that the real fireworks were about to begin. When it was finally Andrew's lawyer, James Moriarty's turn, he wasted no time confronting Sabrina. She sauntered up to the stand, flipping her blonde hair confidently, but the moment Moriarty began, her composure showed signs of crackings. "Miles Moriarty said you claim Andrew Carlyle promised you a penthouse and a generous settlement. Did you record such a promise? Have a signed document?" She hesitated, eyes flicking away. "He told me verbally. We were intimate at the time, so no, I didn't record it." Moriarty pressed on. And this alleged conversation took place when exactly Sabrina shifted in her seat. It was multiple times across different trips. Last month in LA, for instance. Moriarty pounced. "Last month, you say? Would this be before or after you announced your pregnancy to him?" Sabrina faltered. He found out later." "Right," Moriarty said. "And you have medical records indicating you're approximately 8 weeks pregnant." "Correct?" Sabrina nodded. 8 weeks ago from today. Places conception around the time Mr. Carlyle was. Moriarty paused for dramatic effect. Out of the country, at a conference in Tokyo, with known investor Mark Cuban. A startled murmur rippled through the courtroom. Sabrina looked rattled. "He wasn't in Tokyo the entire time. He flew to Tokyo after seeing me." Moriarty arched a brow. "So you claim. But flight records which we have here show Mr. Carlyle's private jet left the US on Sunday, and returned on the following Saturday. That entire week you were posting pictures in Miami. Judge Russell turned her sharp gaze on Sabrina. Miss Miles, can you clarify these inconsistencies? Sabrina's eyes darted around. She seemed to be losing control of the narrative. He must have visited me before or after. I might have gotten the dates mixed up. The point is, he was with me intimately. Moriarty flipped to another set of documents. Let's move on. Your lawsuit claims emotional distress, but you continued to correspond with Mr. Carlyle, requesting gifts. Isn't that correct? Sabrina's face flushed red. Well, we had a complicated relationship. A hush fell over the room as Moriarty took a step back. Your Honor, the defense believes Ms. Miles fabricated parts of her claims. We request that Ms. Miles undergo a paternity test once her pregnancy is far enough along for safe testing. If she refuses, we believe her lawsuit should be dismissed. Judge Russell nodded thoughtfully. I'll consider that request. Suddenly, Sabrina's composure shattered. This is a witch hunt, she spat, standing up. Andrew never loved his wife. He told me himself. She whirled toward Lily. He's only with you for the image, for his precious reputation. Lily closed her eyes, trying to stay calm, as Sabrina's words stabbed at her insecurities. Then Moriarty struck one final blow. Ms. Miles, if the baby is proven not to be Mr. Carlyle's, do you concede this entire lawsuit is fraudulent? Sabrina's face contorted with rage. I'm done here, she hissed, ripping off her microphone. Ignoring the judge's calls to remain seated, she stormed out of the courtroom, her heels echoing angrily in the corridor. Reporters leapt from their seats, chasing after her in a cacophony of shouted questions and blinding camera flashes. Inside the courtroom, stunned silence reigned. Andrew reached for Lily's hand, but she kept her gaze forward, lost in the swirl of revelations. The courtroom emptied slowly, a dull roar of hushed conversations and rapid camera shutters trailing behind. But Lily Carlyle moved like a ghost, numb to the noise, her hand resting protectively over her growing belly. The final blow of the gavel still echoed in her ears, though it had come hours earlier. Sabrina's exit, her furious shriek, her wild accusations, they replayed in Lily's mind like a cruel symphony that wouldn't end. Headlines exploded online within minutes. Mistress Storm's out as court demands. Paternity proof. Carlyle scandal takes dramatic turn. Pregnancy. Claim unravels. Lily kept her gaze forward as Andrew gently guided her past reporters, swarming the courthouse steps. Flashes exploded from all angles. Mrs. Carlyle, is it true the baby isn't his? One reporter shouted. Are you staying with your husband? Another asked. Sophia flanked Lily's other side, her expression fierce, one arm shielding Lily as they made their way to the waiting black SUV. The moment the car doors shut, Lily exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. The silence inside the vehicle was a stark contrast to the media chaos outside. Andrew, seated beside her, risked a glance. You were incredible in there. Lily didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the city skyline, speeding past the window. Only when they reached a red light did she speak. I wasn't trying to be incredible, Andrew. I was just trying to survive. He looked down at his hands, ashamed. I know I put you through hell, Sabrina. What she did today, it proves she was never after love. Just leverage. Lily finally turned to him, her voice low but cutting. You knew the type of woman she was. You chose her anyway. Andrew opened his mouth to speak, but closed it again, knowing she was right. Back at Sophia's apartment, Lily collapsed onto the couch, clutching a pillow to her chest. Her body ached, and her heart even more so. Andrew lingered in the doorway, unsure if he should stay. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked gently. Lily hesitated, then nodded. "I think I need to be alone right now." He nodded solemnly. "Call me if you need anything." Anything. She didn't look at him as he left. For the next few days, Lily stayed mostly indoors. The world outside was too loud, too invasive. Sophia brought her warm meals, ran interference with journalists, and turned off the TV when scandal headlines popped up. Lily tried to rest, but her dreams were fractured images of Sabrina, of courtroom cross-examinations of Andrew holding another woman. But the truth was now public. Sabrina's story had gaping holes, and Andrew's Tokyo alibi was airtight. Still, uncertainty lingered like smoke after a fire. What if there was a sliver of chance that the dates lined up in Sabrina's favor? What if there had been one unaccounted day Sabrina wasn't helping matters? Her social media posts continued vague, poetic captions over black and white selfies. They only believe the one with the louder microphone. Or truth has many versions. I only told mine. It enraged Lily that Sabrina could still cast doubt, especially after her meltdown in court. But it also reminded Lily that lies had a way of outlasting the truth, especially when a scandal sold better than honesty. Eventually, Lily decided to return to the Carlisle mansion. Not because she forgave Andrew, and not because she missed the opulence, but because she missed her space, her garden, her books, the nursery she had begun painting pale yellow before her world fell apart. She needed to reclaim something of her own. When she arrived, the staff greeted her with quiet respect. They seemed relieved to see her, though she noticed how they avoided eye contact when Andrew was mentioned. Andrew, true to his promise, gave her space. He moved into the guest wing and didn't press for conversation. Over quiet dinners, their words were few. She asked about the nursery wallpaper. He replied with updates on stock recovery and board meetings. Their interactions were polite, cautious. The old rhythm of their marriage was broken, replaced with something unsteady and unfamiliar. One evening, she found Andrew in the nursery, holding up a mobile shaped like stars and moons. "I wasn't sure which one you'd prefer," he said when she entered. Lily crossed the room and gently took the mobile from his hands. "This one's nice," she said softly. "It'll catch the light just right." He smiled faintly. "We'll make it beautiful. For the baby." Lily didn't respond, but she didn't walk away either. Then, just as the first fragile signs of peace emerged, a new letter arrived to court, summons this time addressed to Lily directly. The subject, paternity. "They're questioning the father of my baby now," Lily asked, staring at the paper, her voice shaking with disbelief. Sophia read it again. "It's a formality mostly. Sabrina's legal team filed it before the last hearing. It's being processed now, but they'll probably use it to twist public perception." Lily pressed a hand to her forehead. "So they want to put me on trial now?" Sophia reached for her hand. "No. We'll make it clear you've cooperated, that your testimony was honest. But you may have to appear again." Lily nodded slowly, her breath shallow. "I'm so tired, Sophia. I'm tired of proving what I already know." Across town, Andrew paced his office in silence. He had read the summons too. The thought of Lily being dragged back into court, into a pit of accusations she didn't deserve, lit a fire in him he hadn't felt in months. He picked up the phone. "James, We need to end this. I don't care what it takes. Get Sabrina to withdraw her claims. Threaten a countersuit. Freeze her assets. Leak the flight logs. I don't care. I won't let Lily go through this again. For the first time since the affair began, Andrew didn't just want to clean up the mess, he wanted to shield Lily from any further pain. He had already lost her trust, but he wouldn't let the world take away her dignity too. That night, as Lily stood in the garden watching the wind rustle the hedges, she whispered to the baby growing inside her. "You're not here yet," she murmured, "but you've already taught me what strength looks like." A war had been waged over her truth, and the next battle loomed. But she was still standing, and that, she reminded herself, mattered more than anything. The courthouse loomed once again, not as chaotic as before, but heavier with expectation. There were fewer photographers this time, but their presence was still keenly felt. They stood outside like wolves' lenses raised, ready to pounce on any hint of drama. Lily arrived, dressed in a soft grey coat that flowed around her like armor. Her hand instinctively rested on her belly, now more prominent. The child inside had become her constant anchor in this storm. Inside the courtroom was colder than usual, not in temperature, but in tone. The air buzzed with anticipation, yet voices were muted. No Sabrina this time. No fiery glares or smug expressions from across the aisle. Just her lawyer, Garrett Bloom, seated stiffly at the plaintiff's table with a briefcase that looked far too empty for a case that once brimmed with noise and accusation. Andrew sat beside Lily, quiet and visibly drained. The fight had taken a toll. The man who once strode through boardrooms and benefit galas like a lion now looked hollowed out, stripped of his facade. But for the first time, he wasn't faking strength. He was simply present. Judge Karen Russell entered promptly. Her expression was stern as always, but there was something beneath the surface, an undercurrent of finality. She'd seen enough scandals in her courtroom to know when the show was over. "We are here to finalize the matter of Sabrina Miles versus Andrew Carlisle," she announced. "It appears Ms. Miles is absent today." Garrett Bloom stood, Your Honor. "Miss Miles has experienced continued emotional distress and is unable to attend in person. We request leniency and a continuance to allow her more time." Russell raised one eyebrow. "Counselor Ms. Miles has missed 2 hearings and failed to submit several court-ordered documents. At this point, delay is no longer an option." Moriarty Andrews' formidable attorney rose. "We ask that the court proceed with the evidence on hand, including the results of the paternity test and the failure of the plaintiff to provide any substantiated documentation of a financial agreement." Russell gave a curt nod and reached for the white envelope that had been delivered under tight chain of custody protocol. The courtroom held its collective breath as she slit the seal and unfolded the contents. Silence. Then her voice rang clear and firm. "According to the results of the court-ordered non-invasive prenatal paternity test, the probability that Andrew Carlisle is the biological father of the unborn child carried by Ms. Sabrina Miles is 0%. The words echoed like a bell tolling the end of a war. Lily exhaled, her shoulders finally sagging. Andrew's eyes closed briefly, and when they opened again, there was a shimmer of unshed tears, not of sorrow, but of release. Moriarty didn't waste a second. "Your Honor, with this new evidence, and Ms. Miles's continued refusal to provide additional proof of any contract or verbal agreement, we move to dismiss the plaintiff's case in full and request consideration of damages under our countersuit." Bloom cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. We concede to the dismissal of the initial suit. Regarding the countersuit, we request negotiation in private chambers before any ruling." Judge Russell tapped her pen thoughtfully. "Very well. The court hereby dismisses Ms. Miles's claims for financial support, emotional damages, and breach of agreement. Furthermore, this court finds no evidence substantiating her defamation claims or the alleged promises made by Mr. Carlyle." Then she turned to Lily. "Mrs. Carlyle," she said, her tone softening. "For the first time in the proceedings, your integrity and personal life have been publicly questioned, and your role throughout this case has been admirable. You have the right to speak now, should you wish to make a statement." Lily rose slowly. The courtroom watched as she stepped forward, her figure framed by the morning light filtering through the tall windows. She didn't need a microphone. Her voice, calm and clear, filled the room. "For months, I've had to listen to strangers speculate about my marriage, my pregnancy, and my character. I've had to protect myself and my unborn child from lies that were designed to hurt. And while today brings some closure, the pain of what happened doesn't disappear overnight." She looked briefly at Andrew, then back at the judge. "But I am not here to be pitied. I am here to reclaim my peace, my name, and my right to live without constant judgment. Let this be the final chapter of that." Judge Russell nodded. "Well said. You are dismissed, Mrs. Carlyle." The courtroom emptied slowly, with murmurs filling the space where once silence had ruled. Bloom gathered his briefcase and exited quickly. The press waited like vultures outside, but this time security held them back. In the hallway, Andrew reached out to Lily. "Thank you for standing tall. I don't deserve your support." Lily didn't take his hand, but she didn't pull away either. "I didn't stand for you, Andrew. I stood for the truth and for our child. Don't confuse the two." He nodded, guilt etched into his features. "I understand. Truly." Later that afternoon, news outlets exploded with the verdict. Paternity test clears Carlyle. Mistress vanishes Carlyle scandal ends in courtroom victory. The public opinion began to shift. Sympathy leaned toward Lily, painting her as the poised, wronged wife who had carried herself with grace. But Lily wasn't interested in redemption arcs. Back at the mansion, she stood in the nursery again, this time, with no anger in her heart, only a quiet resolve. The mobile above the crib twirled gently, catching sunlight like stars flickering in motion. Sophia joined her, leaning against the doorframe. "You did it," Sophia said softly. "No." Lily corrected. "I survived it." Downstairs, Andrew sat alone in the library. Fingers steepled, staring at a framed photo of the two of them from their college days, back when love had felt easy. Before ambition, temptation and betrayal tainted it. He didn't know if Lily would ever forgive him. He didn't know if their child would ever see him as more than the man who broke their mother's heart. But he knew the lies were done, and healing, whatever it would look like, had to begin now. The news that Sabrina Miles had lied about Andrew Carlyle's paternity and was forced to drop her lawsuit spread quickly through Westbridge. In the days that followed, Sabrina vanished from the public eye, issuing only a brief apology post on her social media before disabling her accounts. Rumor had it she left the city to start anew elsewhere. Andrew's company stock rebounded. Carlyle Innovations returned its focus to green technologies with new deals and partnerships on the horizon. Public sympathy turned toward Lily, who had been unwittingly dragged into a scandal. Many admired her grace under fire. Still, Lily struggled privately. The betrayal by Andrew and the humiliation from Sabrina's public lies had cut deep. In time, Lily decided to stay in the Carlisle mansion, primarily for the stability it offered her unborn child. She and Andrew entered counseling, a fragile bridge toward reconciliation. Some nights he would knock on her door and ask if she needed anything. Slowly they shared quiet moments, listening to the baby's heartbeat, planning a nursery. Andrew vowed to prove his loyalty not just with words, but with consistent actions. No one knew if their marriage would fully recover. But Lily found solace in small, hopeful steps forward. And as the city moved on to the next scandal, Lily prepared for the most important role of her life motherhood. Whether that journey would include Andrew as a loving partner remained an unanswered question, a story yet unfolding. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey of hidden secrets, courtroom drama, and unexpected twists. The scandalous affair, a shocking pregnancy question, and a mistress storming out set the stage for truths that had to be confronted, no matter the cost. At its core, this is a story about betrayal, resilience, and the power of honesty, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, truth can pave the way for hope and healing. If you found yourself on the edge of your seat, make sure to like this video, share it with friends who love a good real-life drama, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales. Your support helps us bring you more stories that stir emotions and spark the imagination. So stay tuned, because who knows what dramatic twists await in the next compelling story.